Sometimes motorcycle engineers get a little too excited about what they can build.
Oh my god!
Moments when cool ideas turn into terrible mistakes. Engineers stop asking, "How fast can we make this?" and start wondering, "How fast can a human survive with this?" These machines exist in that terrifying gray area where cutting-edge technology meets fundamental physics, and physics doesn't negotiate. If you're ready to explore these mechanical nightmares, hit that subscribe button, because some of these bikes will genuinely shock you. They're not just motorcycles, they're mechanical litmus tests for human judgment, and judging by the casualties, most of us fail that test spectacularly. Starting at number 20, the KTM RC8R. KTM built their first superbike in 2009 and basically forgot that normal people would be riding it. The RC8R had an 1190 cubic centimeter V-twin making 175 horsepower, but it came with zero safety features to help you control all that power. This bike was designed like a race machine that accidentally got street legal. The riding position folded you in half, and the engine delivered power in violent bursts that could catch you completely off guard. 1 minute you're cruising, the next minute you're fighting to stay on the bike. The worst part? No traction control, no anti-lock brakes, nothing to save you when things went wrong. The bike would just dump all that power to the rear wheel and let you figure out how to not die. The aggressive suspension was tuned for racetracks, so every bump in the road felt like getting punched. Combined with the sudden power delivery, it made normal street riding feel like an extreme sport. Later models got some basic safety systems before they stopped making it in 2015. Modern KTM bikes like the 990 RCR still have that Austrian attitude, but with computers that actually help keep you alive. Next up at 19, the Ducati Desmosedici RR. Ducati's engineers looked at their MotoGP race bike and thought, you know what, let's make this street legal. Ducati basically took their MotoGP and slapped a license plate on it. Only 1,500 were made, each packing a 989 cubic centimeter V4 engine making nearly 200 horsepower with absolutely no help for regular riders. The engine only worked well at high RPMs, so you had to constantly shift gears just to keep it running properly. No traction control, no anti-lock brakes, nothing to save you when things went sideways. The riding position was so extreme that your back would be screaming after 20 minutes. You'd be bent over so far forward that you could practically lick the front wheel. Try riding like that in city traffic. It was torture. The bike demanded professional level skills for basic riding. It needed constant maintenance, had no power at low speeds, and could easily kill inexperienced riders who thought they could handle MotoGP technology. Modern Ducati superbikes like the Panigale V4 keep the racing DNA, but add all the electronic safety systems that actually let normal people ride them without dying. Coming in at 18, the Honda CB750RR Fireblade from 2004. After years of playing it safe, Honda decided to remind everyone why they used to be feared in the superbike wars. The 2004 Fireblade packed a 998 cubic centimeter inline-4 engine cranking out 172 horsepower and Honda wasn't messing around this time. But here's the problem. Honda built this machine right at the worst possible time. 2004 was that dangerous sweet spot when manufacturers had figured out how to make obscene amounts of power, but electronics were still basically an afterthought. The bike had almost no electronic help. No traction control meant the rear wheel would spin and slide whenever it felt like it. Emergency braking was basically gambling. Sometimes the front wheel would lock up and send you flying. This bike looked totally normal and friendly, which made it extra dangerous. You'd hop on expecting typical Honda reliability and instead get a machine that could bite your head off without warning. The power hit hard and sudden, especially when the road was wet. Track day instructors started noticing a pattern. Experienced riders would get on the Fireblade thinking they knew what to expect, then end up crashing because it was way more violent than it looked.
Oh god! Oh god!
Modern Honda superbikes learned from this mistake. Today's CBR models have computers and safety systems that actually work, turning all that power into something you can control. At number 17, the Yamaha V-Star 1100. The V-Star looked like the most harmless thing on two wheels. A relaxed cruiser with a 1063 cubic centimeter V-twin, producing a modest 62 horsepower. What could possibly go wrong? Everything, as it turned out. Yamaha built the V-Star during the late 1990s as their answer to the American cruiser market. The problem was that 600 pounds of motorcycle riding on dated suspension technology creates its own unique set of hazards. This wasn't a machine that would kill you with speed. It would kill you with physics. That massive weight, combined with flexible suspension, created a motorcycle that developed a mind of its own at highway speeds. Crosswinds became genuine emergencies, as the bike would wander unpredictably across lanes, requiring constant steering corrections to maintain a straight line. Emergency maneuvers exposed the V-Star's fundamental flaws most clearly. The front suspension would dive dramatically under braking, while the rear remained relatively unloaded, creating unstable stopping characteristics. Sudden lane changes turned into wrestling matches with a machine that simply wasn't designed for anything resembling athletic riding. The V-Star represented a classic case of engineering priorities gone wrong. Yamaha focused so heavily on achieving that low-slung cruiser aesthetic that they compromised basic stability and control. Modern Yamaha cruisers like the Bolt learned from the V-Star's mistakes, incorporating improved frame design and better suspension components that actually work at real-world speeds. Number 16. The Suzuki GSX-R1000 from 2001. The turn of the millennium brought us Y2K fears, dial-up internet, and Suzuki's decision to unleash a 988 cubic centimeter inline-4 producing 160 horsepower on an unsuspecting world. The GSX-R represented Suzuki's philosophy that electronics were for the weak. This was raw, unfiltered superbike performance from an era when manufacturers believed riders should earn their speed through skill alone. The GSX-R delivered its power with surgical precision, but that precision came with zero forgiveness for mistakes. The bike's reputation grew through what riders called learning moments, those split seconds when the rear wheel would break loose without warning, sending the machine into slides that separated experienced riders from hospital patients. Corner entry mistakes became expensive very quickly, as the GSX-R would punish sloppy throttle inputs with instant loss of traction. The GSX-R felt manageable at moderate speeds, lulling riders into confidence before revealing its violent tendencies at the limit. Track day organizers learned to watch GSX-R riders carefully, knowing that overconfidence usually preceded dramatic crashes. The legacy lives on in modern GSX-R models that channel the same performance intensity through comprehensive electronic management systems that the original machine completely lacked. Sliding into 15. The Kawasaki Ninja ZX-10R from 2004. Kawasaki engineers apparently woke up one morning and decided that motorcycles had become too predictable. Their solution was the ZX-10R, a 998 cubic centimeter inline-4. 175 horsepower doesn't sound extreme by today's standards, but in 2004, wrapped in a chassis that weighed barely more than a decent mountain bike, it was absolutely terrifying. The ZX-10R combined massive power with handling characteristics that could generously be described as enthusiastic. Below 8,000 RPM, the ZX-10R behaved like a civilized sport bike. Cross that threshold, and suddenly, you were riding a barely contained explosion that would lift its front wheel without consultation or warning. Kawasaki's approach to power delivery was refreshingly honest. They built an engine that hit like a freight train and left it up to riders to figure out survival strategies. The lightweight chassis amplified every input, turning small steering corrections into dramatic course changes. Test riders described the experience as educational, in the way that skydiving without a parachute might be educational. The ZX-10R taught valuable lessons about physics, assuming you survived the curriculum. Current ZX-10R motorcycles retain that aggressive character, but wrap it in electronic systems that prevent most of the original's more creative methods of ejecting riders. Taking the 14th spot, Bimota Tesi 3D. Sometimes Italian engineers get bored with conventional solutions and decide to reinvent basic concepts like how to steer a motorcycle. The Tesi 3D represented Bimota's attempt to solve problems that didn't actually exist, using a hub-center steering system that made every ride feel like piloting alien technology. Powered by an 1103 cubic centimeter Ducati-sourced V-twin producing 98 horsepower, the Tesi wasn't particularly powerful by superbike standards. Its danger came from something far more fundamental. It simply didn't behave like anything else on two wheels. Hub-center steering eliminates traditional front forks, replacing them with a complex linkage system that routes steering inputs through mechanical connections. The result feels completely disconnected from normal motorcycle physics. Riders accustomed to traditional steering geometry found themselves second-guessing every input, never quite trusting the machine's responses. Bimota produced the Tesi in limited numbers between 2006 and 2015, creating a motorcycle that remains more of a curiosity than practical transportation. Modern Bimota continues experimenting with unconventional designs, though recent models integrate more familiar control systems. 13th on our list, the MV Agusta Brutale 1090RR. MV Agusta built a motorcycle that looked absolutely gorgeous, but had some serious anger management issues. The Brutale had a 1078 cubic centimeter engine, making up to 158 horsepower. But it came as a naked bike with zero protection from anything. This thing was basically a superbike with all the bodywork ripped off. No windscreen, no fairings, nothing between you and disaster. The engine delivered massive torque that would lift the front wheel without asking permission, turning normal acceleration into unplanned stunts. The bike had almost no safety systems to help you. When you opened the throttle, it would try to do a wheelie whether you wanted it to or not. Most riders weren't expecting this and would end up flat on their backs. The upright riding position made it look easy to handle, but that was a trap. The beautiful Italian styling attracted riders who thought they could handle more than they actually could. Track days became crash festivals for Brutale owners. Later, MV Agusta bikes got proper anti-wheelie systems and better traction control that actually prevent you from accidentally launching yourself into space. Rolling in at 12, the Honda CBR1100XX Super Blackbird. Honda built the fastest motorcycle in the world, but forgot that it weighed as much as a small car. The Blackbird had an 1137 cubic centimeter engine making 164 horsepower and could hit 190 miles per hour, but good luck changing direction once you got there. This bike weighed 550 pounds, which meant it handled like a freight train. It was amazing at going straight and fast, but turning or stopping required advanced planning and serious muscle. Emergency maneuvers became impossible because the bike just wanted to keep going straight. Low-speed riding was a nightmare. Parking lots turned into wrestling matches because the bike was so heavy and awkward. If you needed to make a quick turn or sudden stop, you were basically screwed. The combination of extreme speed and terrible handling created a unique problem. You could easily get going faster than you could control. Once physics took over, you were just a passenger on a very fast, very heavy missile. Modern sport touring bikes learned from the Blackbird's mistakes, building lighter machines that can actually turn and stop when needed. Claiming position 11. The Triumph Daytona 675 from 2006. Triumph built a middleweight superbike that was absolutely perfect. Perfectly unforgiving, that is. The 675 cubic centimeter engine made 125 horsepower. But the bike demanded absolute perfection from its riders. This wasn't a bike that forgave mistakes. The razor-sharp handling meant that everything had to be perfect. Your speed, your lean angle, your throttle control. One small error, and you'd be sliding down the track wondering what just happened. The high-revving engine needed constant gear changes to stay in the power band, which gave you more opportunities to screw up. Miss a shift or pick the wrong gear, and suddenly you're in trouble with no way out. The worst part was that it looked manageable compared to bigger superbikes. Riders would think, oh, it's only 675 cubic centimeters, how bad can it be? Then they'd discover that smaller doesn't always mean easier. The Daytona attracted overconfident riders who thought they could handle a small superbike, but it punished them just as hard as the big bikes did. Modern Triumph superbikes keep that sharp character, but add electronic aids that give you a chance when things go wrong. Number 10 brings us the Aprilia Tuono V4R. Aprilia took their race-bred RSV4 superbike, stripped off all the bodywork, and created what might be the most honest naked bike ever built. The Tuono packed a 999 cubic centimeter V4 engine producing 167 horsepower, but without fairings to hide behind when things went sideways. The V4 engine delivered its power with typical Italian intensity. This wasn't the smooth, linear progression you'd find in a Japanese machine. The Tuono hit riders with waves of torque that could lift the front wheel at virtually any speed, in any gear, often when they least expected it. Basic traction control systems attempted to manage the chaos, but early versions were more suggestions than actual intervention. Riders discovered that the Tuono's electronic aids worked perfectly until you really needed them, at which point they seemed to take coffee breaks. The naked bike format amplified every mistake. No windscreen meant buffeting at highway speeds, no fairings meant direct exposure to engine heat, and no protection whatsoever when the inevitable happened. The aggressive riding position put serious strain on wrists and lower backs, creating fatigue that led to mistakes. Track day events became Tuono watching parties, as spectators gathered to witness the spectacular wheelies and equally spectacular crashes that seemed to follow these machines around. The bike attracted riders whose confidence exceeded their abilities, creating a dangerous combination. Current Tuono models feature comprehensive anti-wheelie systems and noise-compliant exhausts that address both performance and urban restrictions that plagued earlier versions. Ninth place goes to the BMW S1000RR from 2010. BMW shocked the motorcycle world by building their first superbike, then shocked it again by making it faster than anything else on the planet. The S1000RR arrived with a 999 cubic centimeter inline-4, producing 193 horsepower, and German engineering that treated speed as a mathematical equation. This represented BMW's first serious attempt at a no-compromise superbike, and they approached the challenge with typical German thoroughness. The problem was that 200 horsepower requires more than thorough engineering to manage safely. The early S1000RR featured basic traction control and anti-lock brakes, but these systems were primitive compared to what would become standard just a few years later. BMW had mastered the power creation part of the equation while still learning the power management side. Riders found themselves managing massive performance with electronic aids that functioned more like training wheels than comprehensive safety systems. The bike could accelerate fast enough to literally outrun its own stability systems, creating situations where even experienced pilots found themselves passengers on a runaway missile. The German approach to superbike construction prioritized precision over forgiveness. Every component worked exactly as designed, but the overall package demanded skills that most riders simply didn't possess. The S1000RR became a masterclass in the difference between theoretical capability and practical application. Modern BMW superbikes incorporate multiple generations of electronic evolution, transforming that raw German power into something approaching manageable performance. Eighth on the countdown, the Kawasaki ZZR1400. Kawasaki looked at the escalating horsepower wars and decided to end them permanently. The ZZR1400 packed a 1441 cubic centimeter inline-4 producing 200 horsepower, creating a machine so powerful it redefined what production motorcycles could accomplish. The engineering challenge was immense. How do you create a motorcycle capable of speeds approaching 200 miles per hour while maintaining some semblance of real-world usability? Kawasaki's answer was to build it like a freight train and hope physics would cooperate. At over 500 pounds fully fueled, the ZZR became a study in momentum management. The massive engine created heat that could literally cook food, while the weight distribution meant that direction changes required advanced planning and considerable physical effort. Highway stability was supernatural, but low-speed maneuverability suffered dramatically. Parking lot navigation became an exercise in careful planning, as the ZZR resisted direction changes with the determination of geological formations. Emergency situations revealed the fundamental challenge of managing that much mass at speed. Later ZZR variants incorporated cruise control and improved suspension systems. Acknowledging that pure power, without corresponding refinement, creates more problems than solutions. We're down to 7 with the Suzuki TL1000R. In 1998, Suzuki decided they needed a V-twin superbike to challenge Ducati's dominance. What they delivered was a 996 cubic centimeter V-twin producing 135 horsepower paired with an experimental rear suspension system that would redefine the phrase learning experience. Suzuki's engineers implemented what they called a rotary damper system, convinced they had discovered the holy grail of motorcycle suspension. The rotary damper replaced traditional shock absorbers with a complex mechanical arrangement that was supposed to provide superior handling characteristics. Instead, it created what riders came to know as the death shake, violent tank slappers that could strike like lightning during otherwise normal riding. The TL1000R would suddenly transform from civilized sport bike into mechanical bronco, with handlebars whipping back and forth violently enough to separate riders from their motorcycles' spectacular fashion. Riders described wrestling with a machine that had apparently consumed several energy drinks and developed anger management issues. High-speed stability would vanish without warning, replaced by oscillations that made rodeo bulls look tame. Multiple recalls followed as Suzuki scrambled to fix what had become a public relations nightmare. Some motorcycle historians argue that the rotary damper concept was brilliant but poorly executed, while others suggest the entire approach was fundamentally flawed. Number 6 takes us back to 1987 and the Yamaha FZR1000. The FZR arrived during motorcycle history's equivalent of the Wild West, an era when manufacturers had figured out how to build seriously powerful engines, but hadn't yet discovered the wisdom of electronic safety systems. Its 989 cubic centimeter inline-4 produced 145 horsepower with all the subtlety of a freight train. "1987 was a simpler time. Electronic aids didn't exist, anti-lock brakes were science fiction, and traction control was whatever your right wrist could manage. The FZR delivered genuine superbike performance with absolutely no digital babysitting. This combination proved educational in ways that many riders hadn't anticipated. The inline-4 would break traction without consultation, especially when moisture entered the equation. Emergency braking became exercises in faith and physics, as front-wheel lockups were always just one squeeze away. Track day organizations reported that FZR incidents had become their own statistical category. The bike attracted performance-hungry riders, who discovered that wanting power and controlling power were entirely different skill sets. Some argue that the FZR's reputation was inflated by riders unprepared for genuine performance, but emergency room statistics from the late 80s suggest the bike's bite matched its bark perfectly. 5th place goes to the Ducati 999R. When Ducati unveiled the 999 in 2003, they managed to create a motorcycle that was simultaneously gorgeous and controversial. The 999R variant took that formula and added 150 horsepower of characteristically aggressive Ducati personality courtesy of a 999 cubic centimeter L-twin engine. The 999R embodied Ducati's philosophy that motorcycles should educate their riders about the consequences of poor judgment. The L-twin delivered power in sharp, violent bursts that transformed routine acceleration into advanced physics lessons. Smooth throttle control wasn't just recommended, it was mandatory for survival. Ducati's idea of comfortable ergonomics involved folding riders into positions that would challenge even professional yoga instructors. Extended riding sessions became endurance contests, as physical fatigue created mental lapses that the 999R punished with mechanical ruthlessness. The bike's primitive traction control system offered suggestions rather than actual intervention when rear-wheel grip disappeared. Riders found themselves managing superbike performance with electronic aids that were more theoretical than practical. Some motorcycle journalists argued that the 999R's demanding nature was intentional, designed to separate genuine riders from weekend warriors. Modern Ducati V-twins maintain that essential Italian intensity while incorporating electronics that transform into manageable performance. 4th place features the Husqvarna Nuda 900R. Swedish engineers built a motorcycle that was basically a two-wheeled anxiety attack. The The Nuda packed an 898 cubic centimeter parallel twin, making 105 horsepower into a super lightweight frame that made everything feel like an emergency. Built from 2011 to 2013, this thing was so sensitive that breathing wrong could change your direction. The lightweight design meant every tiny movement got amplified, turning normal riding into a constant wrestling match. The bike had no safety systems to help you, so when you gave it gas, it would go crazy and try to throw you off. When it rained, the bike became almost impossible to control, and you'd probably crash. It was so twitchy that even experienced riders struggled to keep it calm. One small mistake and you'd find yourself sideways, wondering what just happened. Modern Husqvarna bikes learned from this mess. The new Vitpilen 901 has traction control and better suspension that actually keeps you pointing where you want to go instead of wherever the bike decides. Third position goes to the Bimota V-Due. Italians decided to build a motorcycle using a 500 cubic centimeter two-stroke V-twin that made 110 horsepower. The problem? It barely worked half the time. Made from 1997 to 2001, the V-Due was like dating someone beautiful but completely unreliable. The two-stroke engine would either blast you forward or just quit working, often at the worst possible moments. Two-stroke engines are basically controlled explosions, and having two of them meant double the chaos. You never knew if twisting the throttle would launch you forward or leave you coasting to the side of the road. The worst part was when it broke down during emergencies. Nothing ruins your day like an engine that decides to take a nap while you're trying to avoid a crash. Emissions laws eventually killed off two-stroke engines because they pollute too much. Modern Bimota bikes use reliable four-stroke engines that actually work when you need them to. Runner-up position belongs to the Honda CB750 from 1969. Honda built the first affordable superbike, but forgot to upgrade the brakes. The 736 cubic centimeter engine made 67 horsepower, but it came with drum brakes that belonged in a bicycle and a frame made of basically nothing. This was a classic case of putting a race car engine in a golf cart. The bike could go fast, but stopping or turning became major life events. Those drum brakes were more like suggestions. They'd slow you down eventually, maybe. The frame was so flexible that high-speed riding turned into a wobbly nightmare. The whole bike would start shaking and flexing like it was trying to fall apart underneath you. Emergency stops were terrifying because the brakes couldn't handle the power the engine was putting out. You'd squeeze the brake lever and pray you'd stop before hitting whatever was in front of you. Modern Honda retro bikes, like the CB1000R, look similar but actually work properly with disc brakes, strong frames, and anti-lock brakes that won't kill you. And finally, at number 1, the Kawasaki Mach IV H2 from 1972. Here it is, the king of dangerous motorcycles. Kawasaki took a 748 cubic centimeter two-stroke triple engine making 74 horsepower and created what riders called the Widowmaker. This wasn't just a nickname, it was a warning. Two-stroke engines are basically controlled explosions, and having 3 of them made this bike completely unpredictable. The power would hit you like getting rear-ended by a truck, then disappear completely, then explode again without any warning. You never knew what was coming next. The whole bike would shake and wobble so badly that keeping it going straight was like wrestling an angry animal. The handling was so bad that experienced riders would get off looking like they'd just survived a natural disaster. The worst part? When that power hit, it didn't build up gradually, it just exploded all at once. Most riders weren't ready for it and would get launched into the next county. Emissions laws eventually banned two-stroke engines because they pollute like crazy. Modern Kawasaki bikes use 4-stroke engines with computers that actually work, eliminating the Mach IV's crazy power surges. The Mach IV H2 earned its spot as the most dangerous motorcycle ever built. It was beautiful, fast, and absolutely determined to kill anyone brave enough to ride it. So there you have it, 20 motorcycles that prove sometimes engineers get a little too creative for everyone's safety. Which one scares you the most? Let me know in the comments below. Stay tuned in and subscribe for more content like this, and if you enjoyed this video, tap that bell notification, cause pretty sure you'll like the next one where we talk about motorcycles that senior riders would love to have. See you in the next video!